Welcome to How It Works with Holger. Today we're going to have a look at Base64 encoding. First of all, I'm going to explain to you what Base64 encoding is. Most likely you have come into touch with Base64 previously and didn't even know how easy it is to use Base64 with Delphi. And even better, TMS adds to that comfort, providing you with functionality that can be used cross-platform. That means you can use it in your VCL applications, in your FireMonkey applications, and in your TMS Web Core applications using the same class. But first, let's look at the VCL, what it has to offer with regards to Base64. First of all, let's clear up the terminology. Encoding to Base64 means that you convert a binary to text. And decoding means that you take text that is encoded in Base64 format back to its binary original form. And this is exactly where Base64 has been used on the internet. Back in the day, in the 90s, I was part of a FIDO network, mailboxes with modems, and people nowadays can't understand what we had to use modems in order to dial into mailboxes that provided services that weren't even near as comfortable as the internet today. And if you got an email with binary content, that content was UU encoded, which was just a means to map binary characters onto 127 ASCII characters. And Base64 kind of like works the same way. It creates textual content for binary content. If you're interested, go to Wikipedia, for example, and read how the algorithm works, but you don't need to deal with any of this. The number one reason why Base64 is so important is if you have JSON documents with binary content, most of the time that binary content is encoded as Base64 so that the text, the JSON document, can be transferred as text without using binary content. So here's an example. That's an image of a crocodile. I don't think it's an alligator. And that image as a PNG file looks like this inside of Notepad++. And if you Base64 encode it, it looks like this. It's readable just using characters that you would find on your keyboard. So binary converted to Base64 encoded text. And decoding Base64 means you take this text and create the binary again. That's what we will look now, first for the VCL, and then for more than one platform using FNC classes. I already prepared an example application. We won't start from scratch this time. We'll also not create the logic to load the image into our application. The image is preset inside of the VCL form designer. I again picked the alligator crocodile image and simply dropped the TImage control and assigned the picture property to the picture. The key is that we want to be able to encode this image into Base64 encoded text and output it into the memo. And also we want to be able to encode text. This is also pretty common if you have, for example, a token of some sort, or a concatenation of a token. You Base64 encode that sometimes, meaning you need to be able to Base64 encode and decode strings. And this is what we'll do here. We have an edit control, and the text from this edit control will be used to create the Base64 encoded text in the memo. So before to get started, here's a hint how to do that without being tied to the memo control if you wanted to exchange that later on. I'm going to introduce a property to our form class. And I'm going to call the property Base64. And it's going to be of type string to make it easy to assign values to it. And whenever I read and write to the property, I have to provide methods for that. So read, get Base64, write, set Base64. You can press Ctrl-Shift-C to complete the implementation, and we get the two getter and setter methods. So the get is pretty easy. The get is whenever we want to read the Base64 string, the content from the memo control is supposed to be used in this case. So txt memo lines dot text. And when we set the base64 string, it should appear in the memo control. So we can say txt memo dot lines dot text equals value. For performance reasons, you might check first if the value really changed. I'm going to make it easier than this. And txt memo is underlined. Let's see. Oh, I only named it memo. So let's take the txt out. And that's it. So now you have the ability to use base64 in order to assign values directly to the memo control and also to read from it, and the values will be taken from the memo control. It's an easy way to bind your values to user interface controls. Obviously, in a real-world example, you wouldn't use your visual controls to store the data. You would have it stored somewhere else. But still, the principle stays the same. You would have a reader and a getter in order to get the information that you need, and you can access it easily using properties. So let's actually start encoding something. As said, the image is already in the image component in the picture property. We need now methods in order to use base64. And in the VCL, you find it in the system.net encoding unit. Control click on it, and you'll see it's part of the Delphi RTL, not the VCL. I was a little bit imprecise, but we're going to use it here with the VCL application. But strictly speaking, it's part of the runtime library. Right at the top, you find the class TNet encoding, and that's exactly the class that we're going to use. It has to be pointed out that all the classes that are defined as public are class properties or class methods. So you can use the class property base64 of that class for all base64 operations. The same is true for HTML and URL operations that I will cover in a later video. But looking at base64, as it is a class property, that means you use tnet encoding.base64 in order to access all the methods, properties of this property. Sounds confusing? Let's look at it. So we use system.net encoding, and we implement, let's start with encoding the image. So double click on the button, and let's just tinker with the tnet encoding class first. So tnet encoding, and you see base64 is available, even though it's a class. We haven't instantiated an object, so you can type tnet encoding dot base64 dot, and now you get all the class methods of that class that is referenced by that property, because it's a class property. So you can go to decode. No, we want to encode, and then you have certain options. You can either encode a stream, and you get a stream as output. You can also get a string as input and a string as output. So maybe before doing the image, let's do the easy one, the string. So we take encode text, and what do we want to do? We want to encode the text that's in our text property. It's literally one line of code now. So you can type base64 equals, because base64 is our string property that stores the encoded base64, tnet encoding dot base64. We want to encode. What do we want to encode? We want to encode a string. The string is found where? Well, it's in our edit control tedit named input. So we type input dot text, and that's it, because this method is going to return a string, which is the encoded base64 string. Amazed? I was pretty amazed how easy it is to do base64 with the runtime library of Delphi, because you don't need any third party. It's all built into Delphi. So running the application, this is a test, encode text, and there you go. You can type much more if you want to. Encode text, and this is the base64 encoding. The key is if you use special characters. Let's see, let me switch to my German keyboard here, and then if you type umlauts, for example, you type these, These are German umlauts. And encode the text. These are gone. It's all encoded with a standard set of letters that are not special characters per se. And it also works for binary stuff. And this is what we're going to do with the crocodile alligator on the left. So stopping the demo application, we will implement now encode image. It's a little bit trickier, but you already saw we have the option to use streams. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to use streams because we can create streams easily based on a tpicture instance that is stored inside of the image control. And then we are also able to use a tstring stream to easily pass the encoded information to our Base64 property. So let's look at image encoding. We define two variables. One is our input stream, which is going to be a memory stream. We're going to do everything in memory. There's no temporary files or anything. And I'll output the string stream because we want a string that we can show in the memory control. Most likely, this is going to be a file stream or another memory stream in your case, because you don't want to show the Base64 encoded stuff on your screen, most likely. So this, yet again, is just an example to visualize that the encoding works. So we need to instantiate both of them. The memory stream.create, and L output is the string stream.create. As a Delphi programmer, the next thing should be finally type try F and tab, and then the next step should be to free them. I'm even going to be as correct to do it in reverse order of creation. And now we can work with the strings. So what is the content of the input? Well, the input stream is going to be the content of the image. So we can say image, which is the image control on the form, picture. And guess what? Save to stream. That's how easy it is. Save to stream, L stream. Now our data is inside of the stream. We can set the position of the stream to 0, to the beginning. Alternatively, in newer Delphi versions, you can also do rewind, which is not available in lower Delphi versions. So I'm going to go back to this. And now we can say encode it. So what we encode is tnet encoding dot base64 dot encode. And now we have two streams, input and output. So the input stream is L stream, and the output stream is L output. Note that I had to create the output stream before I pass it here. This requires an instantiated stream because tstream is used, the abstract method tstream is used. So you have to create the actual specialized class that you want to use. In this case, I use a tstring stream. So code. So now after this line, our encoded data is in L output. And as L output is a string stream, it has a data string property, which is the string representation of the data inside of the stream. So yet again, you can say base64 equals L output data string. And now the encoded information is in the memo control at the same time, because assigning to base64 also assigns the information to the memo control. And of course, after this, we free the output stream and we free the stream with the image information. That, of course, as we create a copy with save to stream, does not affect the image shown on the form. The image on the form is freed by the VCL because it's at design time even already. It's part of the control, and it will be freed when the application closes. So let's start this. And here's the image. And of course, normally you would offer the user the ability to load a different image. That might be something you can tinker with to add capability to load the image. Look at the last video of how it works with Holger, how to do a QR code, how to decode QR codes. And there I also showed how you can load images easily. So we encode the image, and there you have it. That is the image encoded as base64. And the reverse should also work. So saying you insert base64 encoded content into the edit control or into the memo control, and if you click decode image, the image is shown inside of the image control. And it doesn't work that much different. You just use decode instead of encode. And again, you have different options, different overloads of parameters that are available. So double clicking on the button, and I'm going to implement it right away without calling a different method. L output. What is the output going to be this time? It's 2 memory streams. L input, just to show a variation to before, how we can do this. And of course, again, both have to be created. L output. My typing is subpar today, I apologize. Create, try F, and then here we have in reverse order again, L output dot free and L input dot free. And what do you want to do? Well, of course, first of all, we need to assign the content of our encoded base64 from the memo control, from the string to the input string. And I can take a shortcut right now because I know that the content is in the memo control. Of course, usually you would use the base64. You would probably use a string stream or something like that. I'm going to make it very easy. I'm going to say memo lines.save to file, no, save to stream. And then I have the information from the memo control in my input stream. To make this video shorter, of course, I could use base64 again, no difficulty. Actually, I could try it to simply encode the string that is inside of base64. That would be an alternative. So let's do that. L input position is 0, and then tnet encoding dot base64, and this time not 54, 64, this time decode. And what do we want to decode? We want to decode the input stream, and then we want to store it in L output. While listening or seeing me do this, you might realize that I do this, and because I do this for the second time, obviously I prepare this in advance, I realize, oh, there might be an option to do it differently. Like while doing this, I realized, oh, base64 is a string, so I could do different approaches. So if you watch this, instead of just thinking, oh, where's the source code for this, try to reproduce this step by step and try to use different overloads of the method to get comfortable with the tnet encoding class. And this decodes L input, puts it into L output. So L output now has the binary information of our image. And again, L output dot position equals 0. And now we can say image, picture, load from stream, and we can load it from L output. Perfect. So now the binary information is interpreted as an image. Of course, if there is data in there that can't be interpreted as an image, for example, you don't have JPEG support included in your application and you load JPEGs, then you will get an exception from the VCL saying, hey, I don't know what kind of image this is. So the binary information is really interpreted as is by the tPicture class or tGraphics class, and then shown inside of the image component. As every professional TV cook, I already prepared some encoding from a different image file. So I copy this into the clipboard. You can see there's nothing special. I created it actually using the same application. And I can now go here. Of course, we need to first rerun the application because the source code isn't in there yet. And now I insert the base64 encoded string that I previously created, click decode image, and ta-da, it's a cat, it's no longer a alligator. And of course, if you make tiny little changes like this and then say, okay, decode image, see this portable network graphics image is not valid. So CRC errors and all that kind of stuff are being taken into account when you try to decode, and you get proper exceptions from Delphi that you can use in order to react to these errors in case they occur. So this is already pretty cool. You can use it in the VCL, and I'm quite sure the RTL functionality is already available in FireMonkey. However, TMS makes it even easier to use Base64 encoding using their FNC Utils class. So looking at the TMS FNC Utils, simply use it by including it into your users class when you have any of the FNC products installed, because it is part of the core package of FNC. So it is available in all of the different FNC products from TMS. So that means this is also available in your TMS Web Core applications. And I won't give a complete example and a rundown of the same stuff that I've already shown to you. Instead, I'm just going to go here and say TMS FNC Utils. That is the class that you need to use. Again, it has just class methods, and then you can use Delphi to type base and let code completion do its work to get all the Base64 variations that you can use. And there's one that immediately gives you the ability to create a bitmap file in Base64, or you can save stream to Base64. You can create a bitmap based on a 64 string. You can load a bitmap from Base64, and all of these things are available by simply using one tiny little method. For example, if you have a file name, myfile.png, that's your PNG image inside of this file without the file being opened or anything or shown displayed. So you can do this when you can't interpret the PNG file. You can still encode it to Base64 this way. The file is being interpreted as binary data and not, the picture is not being done. So for example, you can also do like file to Base64. You can do something like, for example, the database, encode your database as a Base64 string. So with TMS FNC Utils, this functionality becomes accessible with one line of code, and you have direct handling for images and binary data files. And of course, not only to encode, but also to decode. So pretty cool what TMS puts on top of the basic functionality that's already included in the Delphi product. I hope you like this incursion into data encoding. My shirt is kind of like a referral to that binary is everything. Everything is just ones and zeros. So I hope you like this little excursion. And next, I'll also, in one of the next broadcasts, I'll also go into the URL and HTML encoding, because the URLs and HTML are also only allowed to have certain special characters in there. For example, you're not allowed to have a comma inside of your URL. And the Delphi RTL provides pretty cool functionality to make sure that these things are encoded properly. You no longer need Indie or any other third-party product for that. It's all included in the Delphi runtime library. With all of that, see you soon.